Hello. I've been reading stuff. Why don't I tell you about some of the stuff I've been reading lately? Starting out with uh, Kate Healy, who this is apparently there's a Karen Healy, and then when she's writing more spicy romances, there's Kate Healy, and it's Kate Healy who lives in New Zealand that I have been reading her Olympus Inc. series, all based off of taking kind of the gods of Olympus, but resetting it in a contemporary kind of New Yorkish kind of feeling setting of the Olympus Publishing Company, run by a really assholish Zeus with brothers around him, Hades, the Dawn, various brothers. But these books are much more centered around the women, starting off with Persephone in Bloom. These kind of cartoony covers, they're a certain way of doing things. They do seem to like these kind of covers. I can't say by the cover alone I would have picked this up. It's because of a author that I know from an old podcast she did. Tansy Roberts was gushing about this on Goodreads, so I picked up the first Persephone Bloom, and I find these series so deliciously good, so deliciously this is just like a beautiful, really well done kind of comfort read. It is, yeah, it's very much kind of romance, strangely kind of very has a lot of kind of wisdom about, like, because there's a lot of stuff in here about abusive relationships, men who are taking things too far. Zeus is a bad boss who is cheating on his wife Hera. All the bad behavior of the gods, but it's reset into sort of almost like a Me Too setting. This isn't to say these books are heavy. They have a very kind of a comfort feel to them. I quickly went through, yes, Persephone in Bloom, Aphrodite Unbound, where Aphrodite is sort of a supermodel, and then Hera takes charge with Zeus's now ex-wife getting to do stuff. And yeah, from those three books, it seems like we're going on to another series. Set in the same universe, kind of split off of a story of Ask Cassandra, where Cassandra is an advice columnist, and this is the very latest one. And Cassandra actually gives very good, kind of very what you would call sensible, smart, wise advice, and that has been a delight. It's just a series that I've just a thing, and half the fun of it is that you highlight names on my Kindle to read about their kind of the Greek counterpart on Wikipedia. There's a lot of stuff sprinkled throughout the whole series of different names, and how she tells the tales, like Persephone at the very beginning there, it's very much taken as like, oh, Hades has sucked her into hell, has kind of tricked her. But it's actually kind of recast and rejiggered in an unexpected way, which was interesting, and isn't just like kind of a slavish retelling of that original Greek myth. So that has definitely been my kind of pleasure light reading. I'm also continuing with my 1901 project. I actually did a review of this one, Dreyfus. The Politics, Emotion, and the Scandal of the Century by Ruth Harris, which, I won't go too far into this other than to say this, I found it a strangely contemporary book, very much kind of like, you can see, I feel like this is like a good start for like the culture wars. This is where you get the birth of the idea of intellectuals and anti-intellectuals as a movement. That kind of there's fights over school boards. There's very much like these are divisions. Like when this scandal happened with Alfred Dreyfus being wrongly convicted for treason, it split the country in a way that was very much an emotional split. This did not have to do, when it comes down to it, kind of the facts. The facts were with the investigators, who, if they'd been kind of reasonably kind of listened to it right at the beginning, this wouldn't have gone anywhere. But there were all there were the all the kind of the anti-Semitic boilings. There was very much kind of a the old monarchists versus the revolutionaries of France's revolution were still battling out then. This gives you kind of a good idea of some of the schisms, some of the divides that probably that carry in France even to this day. Even though it's maybe not monarchist now, it's far more. It's like the monarchists have turned into the kind of the right wing, conservative side of stuff. But it's a book that follows so many different figures. One of those being Emile Zola, doing his writing his Je Accuse, accusing the French government of anti-Semitism, the military probably most specifically for convicting Alfred Dreyfus. The start of like the kind of the grand man of the intellectuals kind of sweeping in, the kind of the media star. Now there's a whole bunch of other people running around in between, underneath that, and how much Zola continues with the battle from that first thing. He kicks it off into the public stratosphere though. So yeah, there's all that. The other one of the other books that I was reading for my 1901 was Literary Lapses. It's Stephen Leacock. It's a book I like. I think it's 1910. Leacock is a big Canadian humorist, humor author. There's an award named for him, the Leacock Award. And this is one of these books that it's kind of uneven in the sense of like, books that are humor does not age well. It does not age well. But it's strange, how much stuff in here actually still applies. The idea of the numbered list is not something that was invented by BuzzFeed, but is something that they were using back at the turn of the 19th 20th century. Groucho Marx and Jack Benny were fans. Monty Python were fans. There's a story. One of the stories in here. One of the pieces in here, Self-Made Men, is very much a Monty Python, the Four Yorkshiremen. Though, to be fair to the Monty Python, they took it to kind of the nth degree and have an amazing punchline of their own at the end of it. So, but the bones of it are back here in Stephen Leacock's Self-Made Men. There's definitely like a lesson in fiction was quite a cutting story of lesson in fiction and getting the thread of it were very much kind of to do with fiction and its the genre conventions of fiction. So lessons in fiction was like, well, the hero looks like they're going to die. What do you think's going to happen next? Well, of course they're going to live because they're the hero. They're going to make it. Kind of a lot of stuff like that. But you also get like getting the thread of it where you have you ever had a man try to explain to you what happened to the books as far as he has read it, and just like how confused of a jumble of names and plots and endings, it's and then coming to the end going, oh, this is just the like the start of a series. It's not even the whole story. It's just like, why did I listen to all that? Which sounds like a BookTube video to me. A lot of my BookTube videos to me. There was one on Shakespeare, a very confused reader of Shakespeare called Solunio, which I might actually just dig up for Shake Timber because who can forget the immortal character of Solunio from The Merchant of Venice and the particular nature of reading and imagination in general, and how some readers are a little bit more imaginative than others, maybe constructing entire characters that aren't there but are convinced that they are, and they get their own solidity. It's it was kind of a fun thing. So yes, it was uneven. There was really dry bits in it, but there's also bits in it. It's like, oh, this still kind of connects. So I got a little bit of a sense of like, okay, yeah, Leacock. I could see Leacock really hitting in his own day. Speaking of other things, I read the the Cold Equations trilogy, for kind of a bit of Star Trek in there. There was a whole Star Trek reading thing going on in one of the months that I missed. So I read, yes, the persistence of memory, the God, what are they? The persistence of memory, silent weapons, and see if I can get it to unclick. And yeah, there was Worf number 3 with the Body Electric, in the Cold Equations trilogy, which I think is pretty mislabeled as a trilogy. It's basically just seems to be 3 individual under stories kind of pasted together. There is sort of a whole thing of like this has got a little bit to do with the Typhoon Pact, but yeah, this it was very much kind of it was really kind of really choppy, in that, like, I think probably of the books, I probably enjoyed the first book in the series the best, and that being the persistence of memory. But that's mostly because that's not Data, that's Noonien Sung, and he was like kind of the main character, and we got into his head for the first hunk of the book, and I actually found that far more interesting than kind of pretty kind of standard off the shelf accurate versions of the Next Generation crew. I found that kind of boring when you don't have like the actual actors, the actual actors doing it. There, it's just like it was okay. Oh God! And the final one in the thing, the final book in the series, it has Worf on the cover, but this has actually got a large amount of later stage Wesley Crusher, who, as a character, I feel sorry for the actor who had to play him, because Wesley Crusher started off as the annoying young kid taking away from kind of good adventures, had maybe a small period in there in the middle where he got to be kind of an actual active character in Star Trek, which was kind of nice. And then they wrote him into kind of semi-godhood status with the Traveler, where he has kind of mystic powers. Basically, he's playing. It's like, oh, any technology sufficiently advanced appears to be magic. Well, it's like, yeah, well, he turned into a magic being, and thus he wasn't interested anymore. He's kind of all new agey and mystic, and it's like they bring him back, and it kind of just reminds you about how much I disliked poor Wesley. So yeah, there's 3 books that were competently written by David Mack, but yeah, it wasn't a trilogy, and except for maybe Sung, who's in the first, and then he does kind of come back in the third. But I feel like these books were basically just sort of a waste of my time. So that wasn't great for that. Oh, I also read Alton of Samasco, a book by Harold Binlos, which is kind of my Western, set in British Columbia. So it definitely kind of filled a kind of a Western theme for this month. Very much kind of a good Canadian, all about man, kind of man's man, everybody in things. Very much kind of like, the old world wants to try and suck him back to the old world. There's a woman who's his love interest is just terrible in this book, for most of the book. Finally kind of coming around at the end, kind of healed by his awesomeness. It's definitely, Binlos is not a men's adventure writer. This is not terse, quick paced adventures. This book took a while to read. It was a thick one. Binlos was a Brit who did have kind of travels to Canada, working in Canada, also in places in Africa, and wrote a lot of novels. After he came back, his health kind of broke, and he came back to England, and he wrote like about 40 novels. So he's very much a working author. And these are not kind of the men's adventure kind of terseness. And there's a part of me that kind of wished that they were a little bit more on the terse side, but very much kind of that romanticizing of the new frontier, and very much kind of pushing the myth, the lie of the empty land, which is there for hardworking men to exploit because nobody else is using it. There aren't any native people around here, so we should just help ourselves. And yeah, that's that kind of bullshit. Written at a time when, yes, the due to the policies of the Canadian government, the native populations were at its nadir. There was, basically forced relocations, starvation, really, really nasty stuff. So yes, maybe you didn't see any of them because they were all imprisoned in reservations, basically kind of almost to the almost level of basically what became concentration camps in South Africa, and then in Germany. We're not talking like there's ovens or stuff like that, but basically keeping people corralled in places, and there being what's basically systematic starvation. That this book does not have anything, not have anything to do with that. But it is very much the colonializer, glorification story of like this guy is awesome. He defeats the evil banks who are trying to take over him, because these are hardworking men who are exploiting the land and making something of it. That mythos, which was very appealing to white people, both in Canada and in Britain. He was a best-selling author because of you pushing kind of stories like that. So yeah, that's sort of what I've been reading lately. My plans are to be reading more 1901 books. I am reading out loud at the moment The Seven Who Were Hanged by Leonid Andreev, which is an amazing book of terrorists convicted of an attempted terrorist attack, and are to be hanged, and kind of going into deep kind of psychological exploration of each one of these characters in each chapter, almost like little miniature plays. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm trying to figure out how to tackle Rudyard Kipling, because I do not want to do an ahistorical read of Rudyard Kipling, which I think you could easily just take it in isolation. But especially after reading a really searing profile of him by his contemporary A.G. Gardner, and I'm gonna try and figure out how to approach him. I've got a biography of him, The Strange Ride of Rudyard Kipling, which is a bit of an older book, so it's not going to be as heavily kind of colonialism and stuff like that. It's probably a far more kind of sympathetic book to him. But I also would like to have the kind of the historical background, and also I haven't read maybe nearly enough Kipling yet to be able to appreciate it. So that is going to be a kind of a longer term project. I'm also reading Dracula at the moment, 1897 or something by Bram Stoker. I'm rereading that, and it's I'm quite enjoying that, kind of in contrast to The Beetle, which was interesting to talk about afterwards, but which was a real slog to read through when I read it. So there's that going. And I might that's basically most of my projects at the moment. I'm sprinkling 1901 stuff and history books or nonfiction about 1901 into my reading, and then just my kind of my also general reading, more romance, more science fiction, more fantasy, whatever I feel like will be the other stuff. So yeah, that is what I've been kind of reading for, like, July, August, maybe now into September, probably. Who knows when I'll release this, if I release it. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.